Me, being active, Anoushé's story.
People come up to me and say, oh, you're really inspirational, what does it feel like to climb with one arm? And I say, it's fine. I would love to say, what does it feel like to climb with two arms? I was born without my arm. I don't know any difference, so for me, I'm used to adapting to that. My arm is the tip of the iceberg. People won't realize how much is going on underneath because I always look really well. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Essentially, it means that my tendons and my ligaments have stopped working properly and my muscles have to hold my joints in place. Anytime my muscles are inactive, my joints will slip. I'd had cancer 6 years ago, and I'd gone from being a competitive swimmer as a child and a competitive martial artist as a teenager to 6 years later barely being able to walk 100 meters without being in pain. My left arm had been really, really impacted to the point where I was becoming dependent on my parents, to the point where I was becoming dependent on people. I'd had such a bad run of health that actually I was quite afraid of living. I was genuinely afraid of when the next surgery was going to be, when the next joint was going to pop out. I was living in a cycle of fear. One of my best friends saw the impact it was having on my life, and she said, you need to do something about it. Why don't we go climbing together? She's a climber. And I went, you have to be kidding me. Frankly, climbing one arm felt quite intimidating. And so when I heard that paraclimbing existed, I could actually be within a para circuit. I thought, oh, this sounds really cool because I can compete against people who understand what it's like competing with a difference. It was hard because obviously I had to recondition my body and learn about what would work and what wouldn't work for my body, and times when you're climbing but you know you've popped a joint and you have to sort of get it back in while you're on the wall, because that for me is the best way to do it generally. Climbing, it's become my way of meditating. So when I'm on a wall and I'm focused on it, the world doesn't exist anymore. For once in my life, I can forget about all that, in particular my health. I can just zone out, get on a wall and do what I need to do. I did notice the difference between me being active and me being inactive. Basic tasks like walking stairs or opening jars in the kitchen to cook with became easier the more sport I did. Last year, I wasn't allowed to lift my nephews. My youngest one was 1 year old. I wasn't allowed to lift him because he was too heavy. This year, he's twice as heavy, and I was happily lifting him up all day round, and there was no problem with it.
Nothing like far-reachy stuff?
I mean, it's the basic things that carry over from being active into actually being able to enjoy those little things that we take for granted otherwise, but actually make a huge difference to how happy you can be as a person afterwards. If I can walk an extra 10 minutes without being in pain, surely that means I can go shopping or work. It's those things that really made a difference when I started climbing.
But that was actually fun.
People say I'm calmer, maybe more focused, but also enjoying life more. They can see there's an innate happiness that maybe wasn't there 6 years ago when I was post-cancer, and trying to find what the purpose of my life is going to be after that. My social life is now here. I train 3 times a week here. I have my teas here. I have had 2 birthdays here now. I think the climbing spirit and community is something that I've not experienced anywhere else.
Find out more about being active, visit www.efds.co.uk.